Okay, good afternoon, everyone. I'm Manoj Ghimire. I'm security engineer of Stupa, and besides Stupa, I'm a reverse engineer and malware analyst. So in this session, here we are presenting about the live phishing, how the phishing happens. So for this, for to demonstrate the phishing, we wrote a small malware in C and assembly just for the demonstration purpose. That theft or steal the users or victims Firefox profile and does the replay attack. Okay, so moving on to the slide. Okay, so these are the major phishing techniques used by the attackers nowadays, like sending a legitimate link and redirecting the victims to the malicious website, or luring them to download the Trojan or malware. And as well as another popular phishing is like sending an email. Sending an email, being a CEO or boss of an organization, so that the victims or the people of that organization can easily click or download the malware, so that the attacker can control their system using the bot. Okay, so I want to use the disclaimer here. So the following applications like Avast, we use Gmail, mentions in this demonstration are only for the demonstration purpose. We do not have any connection with Avast or Gmail. Okay, so uh, so this is the scenario that I will be presenting. Victim gets an email from an Avast support. Looks like an Avast support. The victim downloaded the free antivirus. As we know, the everyone likes free stuff. Uh, and the victims install the antivirus, but at the backend what is happening is the victim's Firefox profile is stealing by the attacker. Okay, so this is the working flowchart of the malware or the process. Okay, so at the very beginning, the victim receives an email. The email is consist of a file that is combination of the two file legitimate antivirus and another file that further downloaded the malware. Okay, and this is the command and control center or the attacker machines, which acts as the brain for to control the victims. Okay, so when the victims downloaded the malware, as soon as executing the malware, the another malware will be downloaded, and to hide the malware itself, we use the ADS alternate, which is alternate data streams, because Windows uses the NTFS file system. So in the default configuration, Windows does not understand the alternate data stream. And when the file ID itself in alternate data stream, it deletes the original one. And to run the file in alternate data stream, here we'll be using WMIC, which stands for Windows Management and Instrumentation Command Line, to run the ADS file. And after running, the malware zips the user's Firefox profile and check either the server is alive or not. If the server is alive, it send the data through the socket, a TCP socket, and terminate itself. Okay. Slide. And when the attacker receives the zip or tar file, the attacker extracted the file and run the Firefox using the new instances created in replay mode. Okay. So here in this demonstration purpose, I will be switching two machines. One is attacker and another is victim machines. So for the attacker machine, I will be here using Linux operating system, and for the victim machine, here so this is the attacker machine. Okay, and this is the victim machine, which is Windows operating system. Okay, so I will be switching to and forth between the attacker machine and the victim machine. So at the very beginning, the attacker create a server or run the server. This server code is written in C and assembly. So when I run the program, so this is an attacker machine. So when I switch back to the virtual machine, and this is the victim machine. So this here this operating Windows Windows operating system is the victim machine. And so okay, so this Manoj Ghimire 983@gmail.com, he receives an email which is visually confusing email. Like when we look at once, this email it seems like as coming from an Avast support, which is visually confusing. And the content here is also original content that the attacker copied from the original Avast email. In real situation, what will happen is when the content is good, then we do not recheck for the sender's email. Yeah, what will happen in real world. So if I so what it just says is get a free 30-day trial of our essential antivirus for your PC. It is free. So when as soon as the victims downloaded the file, so it is being downloaded. Okay, I just save the file and open the. So this files look is as I told previously, this file is consists of two files. That one is benign or legitimate Avast antivirus, and another is the executable file that further downloaded the malware. Okay, so when the victims run the executable file here, at first the Avast antivirus will be installed, and but at the backend, what is happening is the malware is running and sending the file to the victims, sorry, attacker. Okay, so for the demonstration purpose, I'm not going to install the Avast because it takes some time to finish. So when I close the setup, okay, so for the demonstration, I'm not going to install Avast. So but in the backend, what is happening is the malware is zipping the Firefox user profile and sending towards the attacker machine. Okay, so when I so when the malware run, it kills the Firefox and other processes. And if I switch back to the attacker machine, here I get the connection from the 192.168.10.13, which is the victim machine. Okay, so yeah, the data is also downloaded. So as soon as the data is downloaded, I just turn off the server, and here we can see. So so the victim doesn't only the suspicious things is the Firefox is killed here. So the malware there is and this Firefox.txt file is the malware. Okay, so if I open the file, this is the normal text file, but beside the normal text file, the malware is hidden in ADS. So if I save or don't save, so if I perform dir /r, you can see firefox.conf is a text file, and beside the text file in ADS, data.exe executable is hidden. Okay, so to run the data.executable, the malware use WMIC. So if I switch back to the attacker machine, this is the attacker machine. So to run the the file that I received is file. So this is an tar archive that has just been received by the attacker from the malware. Okay, so if I wrote a script to run this POSIX tar archive and to create a new instances of the Firefox in a replay mode. Okay, so for that purpose, I wrote a script. So and this blank is the username of the victim user profile name. Extracting successful, copy successful. So the script, what the script does is it extracted the tar file and make a new instances of the Firefox and copy the file of the extracted tar file of the victim machines to the new instances of the Firefox. So here we can see example. Here if I restore the session. So the attacker replay the Firefox instances of the victim. Okay, so if I go back to the victim machines, we can see here. So everything that is like history, session cookies, everything is, that had been stored under the Firefox user profile, in even passwords is copied to the attacker machine. So we can examine that. So if I restore the session, so this is the victim machine. So Gmail is already opened in victim machine, and as well as Spotify web player is also opened in victim machine. So if the attacker when the attacker copies these files, okay, so it takes some time. Okay, this is the Gmail of victim opened in his or his representative operating system. But when I switch back to the attacker machine, so this is the attacker machine. The attacker also gained the same thing, like session, every session that had already been opened in the victim machine. Okay, like we do not need any authentication for the Gmail because it is already opened. So if I switch back to Spotify, it is all the Spotify is instances is already opened in victim machine. So we do not in attacker machine we do not need any authentication. Okay. For now, I'm going to as well as so yeah. Please. Okay, so the Spotify is also replicated, or like we do not need any passwords or authentication to play the Spotify. So as well as what we do in our daily like daily day-to-day works, we save our password in the browser. Yeah? Am I right? Yeah. So if the password is also saved in browser, the attacker can also gain to the passwords that had been saved in the either or Firefox or Google Chrome or any browser operating system. So we can see the password is also visible here. And okay, everything that the user is using in his or Firefox is copied. Okay, so if I go back to the history, we can also see the history. Everything is replicated over here in this attacker machine. So this is the malware. Thank you. So if you have any questions, you are free to ask.
Thanks, Manoj. Hi all, Ashish here. So, Manoj, if you could go back to your slides where you showed the flow state of the malware.
Yeah, sure thing.
So basically, what's Manoj just showcased was how the attackers are still reliant on exploiting, the easiest route in to a system or an organization, which is a spam email, right? Because it's easier to entice human beings. So, hiding a malware behind a legitimate file, and giving you access to the legitimate file, in this case, the antivirus. But when you download an antivirus in a very clandestine mode, in that kind of covert operation, it is also downloading a malware. But to circumvent some of the basic controls that are present in the modern day computing systems, for example, in this case, Windows device, right? To circumvent some of those basic security controls, the malware is further disguised as a text file, and it is written in a way that Windows system cannot interpret what it means. For Windows system, it's just a text file, right? As soon as the text file is downloaded, the malware does what it needs to do. It starts copying the browser sessions, browser information, package it, zip it up, and then starts making that connection attempt to the command center. In this case, the Linux box that Manoj was showing, which is the hackers command and control center. So in this case, the victim's machines becomes a bot, right? That is now just waiting for a command from the brain, in this case, which is the attacker's machine, the CNC server towards the right hand side of the screen in blue. And as soon as the connection is made, the files get transferred. The attacker then has got access to the zip file, and as Manoj showcased, that zip file is extracted. zip file is extracted onto attacker's machine, which basically gives access to everything from browser history to browser sessions to even password vault in the browser, right? So in this case, one of the key things that you need to remember is this is not just stealing your browser history. This is actually stealing your active session as well, and it is replaying your session. So for Gmail, for example, when Manoj logged in from his Linux machine, the attacker's machine, it for Gmail, it was as if it was Manoj's 983 logging in. And as you can see here on the screen as well, the passwords are copied across. So there is no authentication required, and this is what is interesting about browser hijack and browser session hijacking and replay. There we circumvent the whole authentication process as well. Okay, so I just wanted to kind of summarize what Manoj just explained before I dive into incident management side of things, using this as an example, because there are things you do before the before the incident and post the incident, right? Okay. Any questions before we proceed? No. All right. I'll proceed to incident response side of things. So now, if you look at it, we have this is like a golden hour, right? So you've got a malware that has now entered your organization or your machine. It's a golden hour. Now it's a race against time, in terms of how is that malware going to now replicate itself or move laterally within your organization, infecting more and more machines and taking more and more user information. If the target is somebody who's critical in an organization, it could be a senior manager, could be a network administrator who has got like a godlike permission. It becomes really challenging to stop how that attack then propagates from there onwards. So having an incident response plan to manage that golden hour is very important, but having just an incident response program does not suffice, because you need to reduce the risk that is given, right? You've had a malware strike. Now you had a security incident. You need to have a plan to now respond to it. But it's not just about risk reduction anymore. It's about optimized execution. How quickly can you execute? It's about that gap between the time to detect and the time to respond. The longer the gap, the bigger the problem is for that particular organization or the individual. So here I'm going to talk basic. I'm not going into technicalities, but I'm going to talk basics about how to optimize your security incident response. The 4 or 5 principles that you need to take into account when it comes to optimizing your security incident response, cybersecurity incident response plan, crisis management, how to the roles and responsibilities side of things. So without further ado, what my engineer earlier just showcased was a demo of a cyber kill chain attack, right? Cyber kill chain, just to decipher what cyber kill chain means, there is always it always starts from reconnaissance, right? So there is, the hackers don't wake up and say, okay, I'm going to attack Manoj today. There is a research that goes behind it, who to target. I mean, there are cases when, like if somebody is just targeted, as an opportunist, but when the organized crime group operate, they operate with a very, very the research and development that goes behind the target organization or the target individual, right? So they harvest information about target, and then they start crafting that exploit. Then they deliver that exploit. Like in this case, the exploit was the weapon was the malware that was going to steal the browser session and all the browser information, including the password vault. And then the delivery mechanism. So the malware that weapon now needs to be delivered to the victim, right? So in this scenario, we were using a phishing email that went out to manoj983@gmail.com, and we impersonated Avast offering a free antivirus trial. Now, we chose Avast just for a demo purpose. Avast is an open source antivirus; anybody can download it for free. But it is about tricking that human. The whole point of social engineering attack is it's like a con artist. You trick somebody to either divulge sensitive information or give access to systems or your accounts, right? So that is delivered via means of the phishing email. The victim is then tricked to respond to that call to action. In this case, download that that malware. Once the malware is downloaded, it is installed on the victim's machine. Behind the scene, it is also downloading the malware. As Manoj showcased, you are also given access to Avast. In that sense, the organized crime group do have a very good customer service. They deliver what they promise. You are given antivirus, but then behind the scene, in a very clandestine mode, it's also downloaded a Trojan that is now going to exfiltrate the browser information. It was designed to steal browser information, your sessions, and in an attempt to then replay it from the attacker's end, right? It could be something that could just, it could be a ransomware that would have encrypted your device. It could have been another Trojan that just exfiltrates, your Windows, directory information, etc. So in that mode, then it goes into command and control. Now the attacker has got command over, as soon as the victim's machines connect to the attacker's machine, which is the commanding machine of that botched network or botnet, called in cyber language, right? So that machine is now can be remotely manipulated by the attacker. Sorry, that there's an error there. That should have been the attacker. So remotely manipulate the victim, and then then there's an action on objectives. In this case, hijack browser sessions, right? So now I've got access to email, so it's easier. If that target was a high-profile target in a company, it's very easy for me to reset pass. I don't even need to know your password. If you haven't opened any browser session, for example, let's say you haven't opened access to your CRM. Now I can't access my CRM system, but I can now trigger a password reset, and that password reset email would come to that email inbox, which I already have access. But the first thing I'll do is I will also try and buy some time. I will kick the victim out of his own account, her own account, right? So that I have got as much time as I need to then achieve that action on objectives. Following that, there will be an extortion or demand for payout, email threatening your operational stability, and then also reputation damage. So this is not a hypothesis. We see this day in, day out. So this is what how cyber can work. Right. So preparation, intrusion, and active breach. Okay, so let's look at the 4-step framework in managing cybersecurity incident. The first thing is you have to take into account that time is critical here, right? It is now the race against the hacker and the responder. So the offensive side and the defensive side. The first thing we need to do is contain, and this is where quite a lot of organizations go wrong. We go straight into response mode. Now, that is not how you respond to security incident. The security incident, optimizing security incident starts from you contain the incident and then you respond and recover from that incident. You don't go into a response mode. I normally give an example of a football pitch. There's a football match going on. I live in UK, so there's a Premier League going on between, let's say, Man United and Chelsea, right? And there's a player injured on the pitch, right? So the doctor, the medical assistant at the pitch, his or her responsibility is not to try and figure out, oh, how did this, leg broke? How many pieces? What are, how many pieces are we looking at here from a broken leg perspective? Right? That is not the responsibility of the medical assistant at the pitch. The game needs to carry on, right? There is a game that needs to be won or played and won, if that's the aspiration. The medical officer's role there, or the assistant's role there, is to contain, whatever, if it's a bleeding, to pain, to contain that pain, put the the victim on the ambulance, send him or her to the hospital, and that's where the analysis happens, by the specialists. Now that medical assistant might still be present there, but that's where the analysis happens. Once the analysis is done in terms of, okay, how did this bone break? How many pieces are we looking at? Where are we seeing the nerves ruptured, and how do we fix it? So that how do we fix it part comes after that. So it always starts from containment, right? So in containment, you're looking to quarantine. You have to isolate the event so that it does not propagate within your organization. You have to then triage the, how many people have downloaded this? How many people have seen this email and downloaded this could have downloaded this malware? And your focus there is to prevent lateral movement, not to respond to that incident. You have to buy time to respond to that incident, right? You cannot be trying to address an earthquake while the earthquake is still happening. Right. The second is, once you've now contained the incident, you now have time. You've bought some time to analyze what happened. Like, how do I now plan the next set of actions, whether it be a technical actions, whether it be a communication plan to the consumers or to the legal and regulatory body. How do I do this so that I prevent a damage to our organization, not just from a technology level, not just from operational level, but reputation damage, financial damage, and regulatory sanctions as well, right? So here now you are going into investigation mode. You are looking at what happened. How did this malware come into our network? Why did our intrusion prevention system did not detect this? Time is of essence when it comes to managing security. Like I said, it is now you have bought some time. You are now going into that deep dive mode where you're now double clicking on that and on that incident, and you're trying to extract as much data as you can to then put some meaning around it. So you can turn that into information. With that information, you can gather yet internal intelligence as to what happened. Based on that intelligence, then you can take the response actions, right? This is where you're aggregating data from your compromised machines or accounts. What happens? You are now taking copy of that malware as to why did our antivirus or whatever systems that you are using for intrusion prevention, why did it not detect it? Detonate that malware in a sandbox environment. Take the signatures out. You're now planning, saying, okay, I need to talk to our infrastructure engineers to push this signature to our antivirus. I've acquired signatures. You go to Malware Bazaar, or you look at various forums. What's happening? Who knows about this target? Threat actor group. What information is available? So you're gathering all that data, and you are like churning that into information and intelligence as well. Right, then you go into response mode. So response mode is the third part of the overall cyber incident management. It is not the first. Mostly organizations go straight into response mode, and that's the wrong way to deal with it. That's where you lose time. That's where you lose the battle with the attackers. Right, in the response now, you've got, okay, we found out how many accounts have been compromised, what data have been taken. If I was one of the victims, let's say I'm being a CEO of Stupa, some intellectual properties, some confidential information I may have access to, right? Okay, what does this mean to an organization? We may have to do a public relation, like get involved with public relation, get the comms out, to maintain that level of trust with our investors, with our shareholders, right? And also in terms of our consumers, because if the attackers are now going to threaten that reputation damage, saying like, if you don't pay us so many bitcoins or so many $1 million, we're going to make this public. You now need to already be thinking ahead of that. Okay, how are we going to maintain that trust, that authenticity with our consumer base as well, so that they do not do a mass exodus with our business and brand. You plan for technical response, like I said earlier. Now you've investigated that malware, right? You've now found out that your malware detection did not have that signature in the first place. It was a zero-day attack, or you had been running a legacy operating system, which the malware took advantage of to exercise that vulnerability and have an impact. Then you plan a response. Okay, we need to patch. We need to get this signatures pushed from our antivirus. management console to all of our end user computing devices, all of our servers, policies, processes you put in place, right? What governance policies you want to put in place. Maybe you should not have given admin access to your local, local admin access to your users. So the new policy is all the local admin rights on the end user devices will be taken, right? There might be stricter process you want to put around, like how your email system, if you're using Gmail or Microsoft for your enterprise email or business, business digital workspace, then you may want to look at how to tighten your spam policies. Like what went wrong with our anti spam policies, advanced threat protection, configuration side of things, personnel side of things, clear accountability in terms of who does what, during the incident response. I have been in my time, 15 years plus in infosec domain. I have been in incidents where just gathering people for a kind of a war room discussion took longer than actually responding to that incident because there was no clear accountability in some of the businesses, right? And then the last part is the recover part, right? How do we prevent future recurrence? What technical controls and process controls were missing? That recover part is at the end. Once you've now stabilized your organization, once you've sterilized the whole situation, now you are looking at lessons learned. That problem management. How do we prevent future recurrence? What was happening here? Was it our patch management process not working? Why did our malware protection didn't work? User education and awareness. Why are people still clicking on this kind of email? Why are they not seeing that the email actually didn't come from the genuine source? And then you also then need to do an audit, inside an audit. I don't mean an information system audit here. Audit in terms of a very technical audit. You have to look from hacker's lens. Do that inside out, attack and outside in attack. See what, how the hacker sees your organization, right? Do an active breach simulation. And then, reevaluate. Just because you've kind of handled this situation does not mean, you are all protected. You need to constantly reevaluate your incident response program and plan. So when it comes to incident response, right, discipline is very essential, both when planning for and dealing with crisis. Basically, in other words, the action of the security team should be well planned. You can't be running around like headless chicken when that golden hour strikes. The plans should not be abandoned. At the same time, the reverse is true as well. The plans should not be abandoned in the heat of the moment. You've created the plan, stick to the plan, right? That is important. So, starting with quarantine, triage, you have response team coming together, patch, exec update, PR comms being stage one, right? You don't want your shareholders, your consumer base to find out from a third party or a third channel that you've been breached, or the hackers leaking that information on the public domain. And if I were, one of the customers, I would lose trust in your brand. If I were a shareholder, I would lose trust in that brand. I'd actually look to get my investment out of it. I don't want to be, in a business which drags me down with all, my investment down with all kind of regulatory, financial sanctions and reputation damage, etc. Right. Stage two is then you're looking at forensic side of things. You're doing legal review. Okay, what sort of actions can we take from legal perspective? What are our due diligence? You may have duty to notify regulators. If you're a financial body, you may have a duty to notify within certain hours what happened, how it happened and what have you done. And then, like you continuously look at what else can be done to fortify that remedial action so that you don't fall victim to similar attack in the future, right? Having that process map, having that RACI and escalation matrix, a clear RACI and escalation matrix, use cases and playbooks, predefined use cases and playbooks. Having that in place is important. Just having an incident response, program standard does not help. Like who's going to turn that standard? You need to have a clear process map, playbook. Okay, this is a phishing attack. It's in fact, it's an advanced persistent attack, right? How are we going to deal with this? You should have a playbook. Who's going to do what in that playbook, right? Then you're looking at roles and responsibilities. So there are engineers. I use the term security in this case. I'm using security obligated engineers, security obligated managers. Now this could be IT managers to security managers to ISOs to execs, CIOs, CTOs, right? So the roles and responsibilities should be clear. So, security engineers will be the first responders, immediately take actions to, contain that blood loss in that football pitch scenario that I gave, where you have got a broken leg situation. So in this case as well, first responders' responsibility is, let's contain this incident and buy some time. Then the security manager's role here is tacticians. Let's analyze the situation. What happened? Let's direct the, to direct that investigation and take, advise on the next steps or plan next steps. The executive's role in incident management is, and for far too long, cybersecurity has been shoehorned through being an IT problem. It's not an IT problem. We've seen this, that it's no longer an IT problem. As I said, the constellation of the risk impact is huge. It's not just, operational stability. It is the overall business resilience. It threatens the existence of business. TravelX in 2020 had to declare bankruptcy because of one ransomware attack. Right? It is no longer just a technology problem. So executives have to be informed. They have to be kept informed as to what happened, how it happened, how did it impact us, and what are we going to do about it, so that even execs can see, put on their weight and that gravity, look at that gravity of the problem to provide that oversight and guidance from, CEO level, whether it be from a strategic direction perspective, investment, or, the personals that are needed. You may need to bring some specialists to help you with digital forensics, right? So that's kind of how you look at the cyber incident response. But, the word crisis, on one part represents dangers, but on the other part it represents opportunity. Now, why am I bringing this statement from John F. Kennedy? Is because for far too long, the businesses have been living in that kind of fear-mongering mode, scaremongering, that the security and technology teams have been taking that fear-mongering approach that, oh, if you face cyber incident, we are doomed, right? But as the consumer, as that that paradigm shift we are seeing, as the consumer's awareness is growing with around their data security, their data protection, their privacy, what they're also realizing is this is a dynamic risk. People are not going to blame you for earthquake. People are not going to blame government for earthquake. But if you are in an earthquake-prone zone and you don't have a response plan and you don't manage that incident response in a manner it should be, then that government is culpable. So the same analogy applies in terms of cyber as well. Enough of scaremongering your board, enough of scaremongering your executives, in that cyber incident is a bad thing. Cyber incident actually can be a really good thing to give your shareholders the confidence, to give your exec the confidence, the return on investment, to give your shareholders the confidence in terms of why to continue invest in this business. Why are we a resilient brand or business? To give your consumers the interest that we care about you, we value about your data, and to strengthen that trust, because how you respond to that incident actually can be very important in strengthening that relationship with your customer ecosystem, right? So here are my 4 basics when it comes to effective cyber crisis management. If you want to capitalize on that cyber incident is not a bad thing if you're managing it well. So first thing, when it comes to, if you want to actually capitalize on a cyber incident and showcase that that trust and value across your customer ecosystem, from shareholders to your execs to your consumers, is know your organization values. Anchor your incident management plan to organizational values, because when that golden hour, when the things go south, that will help you be focused, have that laser-like focus on what your next step is going to be, right? The next thing is, don't try to boil the ocean in one go. Don't run around don't create a crisis within a crisis. Have a very clear steer in terms of, what are you, how are you going to prioritize? Compartmentalize the incident. In the earlier case, okay, we've got a phishing email. Let's now go and respond to this phishing email, right? So okay, let's first block the response back to this email. Let's create a DNS sinkhole so that whoever clicks on that link does not go to the internet, right? Let's block that email address from sending more emails, right? Normally what we tend to do is, there's a phishing email, we are rushing to send out comms to the entire organizer. Who's going to read that comms? People don't read email that way. So compartmentalize the bigger problem into smaller chunks, then prioritize which actions to take. So it's about doing the right thing in the right order. The other big thing that I've seen is don't assume, don't drink that Kool-Aid. We are a big company, we don't do things like that. Oh, we have got teams of experts, we don't do things like that. Don't assume, right? Create the list of things that you don't know, but you need to know, and work in that priority. Then the fourth and the most important thing is that customer ecosystem. Put your customer ecosystem first. Your shareholders, your customers, put them first, because you can't lose that trust, that authenticity in the relationship that you have, right? Get the facts out. Take the responsibility of getting that facts across to your customer ecosystem. Build that trust. Give them assurance that you are taking the right responsibility of this. Get that fact, speed, context, values, that these are critical things, right? And get that out there and be efficient about providing remedial fix. If it was stealing, for example, if it was stealing your identity, providing identity protection systems to your consumer base for next, I don't know, 90 days, so that they can keep an account or tab on if their data is being used for malicious reasons. Be efficient in providing the fix. Don't wait until 6 months or 3 months down the line to admit what happened. And once you've done this, don't be surprised if your brand if your brand reputation goes up, because the reason, just for examples, the reason I may choose to stick with Spotify and not Amazon Music could be very much like, what, they suffered a bit. I really like how they prioritized, how they were prioritizing my data security, my value in this crisis moment, how they were providing me assurance that everything is under control, and this is how they'll help protect the malicious use of my data as well, right? So don't be surprised if your brand reputation goes up, your business value proposition goes up. Stop fear mongering. Cyber incident is not the end of the world. Okay, cyber hygiene, basic foes. This is where, irrespective of wherever you are in the cyber maturity index, these are 4 things you should straight away do, right? Because I, as an attacker, I'm not going to say XYZ company, oh, they are very poor in their cyber security maturity, so we're not going to attack them. In fact, I'm going to attack you. You're the easy target. We're all like, the attackers are always looking for easy target, right? So based on the current risk, it is about protect the identity, right? If you can protect the identity, that 75 to 80% of cyber attack actually can be de-risked quite quickly. So if you don't have enterprise password managers, provide that enterprise password managers to your employee, because one of the biggest things that humans don't like is passwords. And we make their job complicated by saying, create a complex password for different systems, and you've got like 50 systems in your business that an individual has to create a password for. And what they'll do is recycle their password. Enable multi-factor authentication, right? Have a clear cyber incident response management plan. And educate your board, educate your exec, educate your team in terms of how not to fall victim to things like phishing attack, how to report it as well, right? So it is not a question of if, but it's a question of when, right? The FBI director once very famously said that there are 2 companies, one that will be hacked, that has been hacked, and one that hasn't been hacked. In fact, I'll add a third one. There are 3 types of companies: one that has not been hacked, one that has been hacked, and one that will still be hacked after that incident, right? So understanding the nature of the security breach is paramount, so that you can gain an understanding of the necessary response and learn from it as well, right? So preparing for the crisis in the middle of one is definitely not a incident response plan, a pragmatic incident response plan. But you also need to understand that not every event is an incident, and not every incident results into breach and crisis. So don't cry wolf. Don't don't create a crisis within a crisis situation. So in that case, you need to have a very, not just a proper use case RACI matrix, but a very calm approach in how you deal with the security incident. At the same time, don't just rely on your systems, your intrusion detection system. You have to look at the, to try and detect breach from multitude ways. So it could be like a surge in activity in your customer contact center. All of a sudden, you're getting increase in the volume of calls in your customer contact center, and everybody's saying, the money is lost from their wallets. something's going wrong here, right? Or systems nearing maximum computational power. Maybe your systems have been compromised and doing crypto mining, right? Or a third party notifying you as well. All right, so I just want to end with this, quote from Mike Tyson. We all think we have a plan. We all assume that we are good at cyber incident management. Everyone has a plan until they get punched in the face, and that's when the true plan comes out. So don't, always, like look at your cyber incident response plan. Do a tabletop exercise, do a desktop, scenario of, how are we going to, is this still, our plan still optimized? Is it fit for purpose as well, right? And then constantly pivot your plan, constantly improvise your plan, get that, like I said, get that inside out attack done, outside in attack done, and see whether your not just your detection measures, but your response plan is working as well. Is it up to date as well? Okay, so that's what I wanted to share with you from my experience. If you are interested in having further discussion, a little bit more technical deep dive, no obligation chat, feel free to reach out to us and we can share some tips around how you can optimize your security incident, what you have currently and what you need to do next, right? Like I said, no obligation chat, we can have that, because we have to come together on the defensive side as well. Not just the offensive side work really great. They have a community, they collaborate and they co-create malware nowadays. We have to do the same on the defensive side. So that's the offering. When we share the slide, you'll also get some useful metrics that you as a responsible individual within the business, whether you're an exec or whether you're a security engineer or a manager, these are some of the metrics that you need to measure to keep tab on how your cyber readiness and resilience is performing, and we'll share this with you. So thank you very much for patiently listening to me, and open for any questions.
Thank you, Ashish and Manoj, for that interesting and intriguing presentations. We will be moving forward to our Q&A session. So if you have any questions, you can unmute yourself or even write down your questions in the chat box. We have one question from Mr. Nibesh Shakya in the chat box.
Sorry, I can't see the chat box. I'm in presentation mode.
So his question is, सुरुमा scope छुट्याउनको लागि data categorization कसरी गर्नुपर्छ?
Right. So just for the guests who are not from Nepal, so the question from Nibesh here is, how do we categorize what is the data that is worth protecting in the first place, if I may put it in that way. So first thing first is you need to understand, as an organization, you need to understand what your crown jewels are, right? So if you're a I don't know, a bank, what are your intellectual properties that you want to protect? Having a clear information classification is very important, right? What is confidential for you? What is highly confidential or legally privileged, whatever you want to call it? What is public data? What is internal data? So that once you have that clear categorization based on this, let's say 4-quadrant or 3-quadrant, whatever you want to adopt, right? Then you can mobilize your incident response accordingly. So if it is a public data, that's been breached, you don't have to be running around creating unnecessary noise and all that. But first thing first, you need to understand, the crown jewels that needs to be protected. So as a bank, okay, what are the intellectual properties for us? What is going to be quite costlier for us if we lose, that information asset? Or what are the information services that are important to us as well that we cannot compromise at any cost? Right? Having that clear, almost visualization of your crown jewels in terms of your data that needs to be protected and the information services that service that information asset is important. And for this, how do you do it? You have to sit down and talk to your business leaders, your stakeholders. Sit down with finance team, understand with the finance team what data is important for you, what can we not lose, what are the data, if it comes out in public domain, is going to are we going to grapple with, when it comes to cyber incident, right? Sit down with your HR, sit down with your CIO, sit down with your CEO, and have that very non-technical discussion about what data needs to be protected for their respective organizational unit, right? Why it needs to be protected? What is the impact of that data? Right, that is the risk impact awareness. Don't go in that shiny new tool syndrome mode. Normally what happens in cyber is you have this list of, you bring this checklist, or you get an auditor and they come up with a checklist of things you need to do, and then you fall victim to a shiny new tool syndrome. You go into a solution driven approach. It's not the solution driven approach that you have to adopt. You have to look at the problem driven approach. What is going to be problematic for us as an organization? And to do that, to get that categorization, to get that not just categorize it, but to calibrate it to a degree that it gives you confidence in terms of when the golden hour strikes, is you need to have that conversation with your business and understand what needs to be protected. What are the information, what data needs to be protected? What are the information assets within the organization that cannot be compromised? What are the connected services? Because you may have an information asset that is, like, let's say, sitting in the back end, but you may have a web service that is being used by your finance team to pull that data. So now you need to protect that web service as well. Right? Understand what connected services you cannot, you cannot compromise. That will give you the categorization that you need, and then build a clear incident information classification table.
Thank you, Ashish.
I hope that answers your question.
We still have a few minutes for the end of the session, so if you have any other questions, you can ask them.
Okay, if there are no questions, in that case, in the earlier incident, Manoj, would you share that email, please, on your screen? Let me quickly give you some insights that you can take away. How would I have responded to that incident? Manoj, are you sharing your screen? So normally when there's a phishing attack, the first thing we tend to do is, let's send the comms out. Let's send the comms out to our organization that there's been a phishing email that's come through. I'll give you a situation, right? I was in a situation when, a couple of years back, I won't name the organization, it's not right. We saw what was not just quite a sophisticated phishing attack, but a very persistent phishing attack. The first wave we saw was, we got hit by 3,000 emails, right? Within 30 minutes, we got hit by another wave, which was 5,000 emails, right, to our global user base. Now, the first thing, if I had taken the approach of, let's send out an internal comms that there's been a phishing email, by the time they read that, they receive that email, they read that, a lot of people within our global organization would have downloaded that malware. And then, it was, my incident response would be, let's pack our bag and just shut down our system and just wait for the miracle, right? So comms is not the right thing. Comms is important, but that's not your containment measure. So in this case, what I would have looked at, first thing I would have done is, okay, we've seen this email come through. It's confirmed. We've got a report that there's a phishing email that's come through. The first thing I'd do is I would get my end user computing team or the infrastructure team to block outgoing emails to this email address, that visually confusing email address, as if it is coming from support@avast.com, right? The second, I would do as a containment action is when I hover over that download link, it gives me that the attacker server's address, right? Now, I know that just blocking response to this is not going to help. So what I now do is, work with my network engineers to create a DNS sinkhole to say, okay, any request from our organization, from within our organization to this URL should be dropped in that DNS sinkhole. So now, even if, let's say, Pragya clicks on this, she's not going out on the internet. That connectivity to the command and control server is killed. Now I bought myself some time. Let me investigate what happened here, right? Let me investigate how many people have downloaded. Let me investigate why did our malware detection system didn't flag this as an attack, right? So I would take this copy of the malware. I would go to a sandbox where I can safely detonate it. Now, not all organizations have got the sandbox environment, but there is something, a free open source called hybrid analysis, right? You can go to hybrid analysis, Google hybrid analysis, go to hybrid analysis, and then it gives you a sandbox environment to detonate that malware, right? Obviously, free version will put you in a queue. I mean, the license for hybrid analysis tool is not that expensive. It's, I think, $1,000 a year. So, I would detonate it. It would give me all the signatures for that malware. It would give me the malware's TTP. Now I've got very critical information here. So now I will work with my security engineers. Okay, our semantic didn't detect this. So semantic does not have a signature for this. So from the management console, I would do an immediate push of that signature, malware signature, to all of our infrastructure and end user computing states, right? Next. So even if the next wave comes, let's say they change the attacker changed the command and control center's URL or the attacker's destination, that doesn't matter to me anymore, right? Because what I have got is the malware signature, and I have just updated my malware definition to look into it. Then I would also look at, okay, who's downloaded it? What kind of data might have been taken based on that TTP? Then I would work with my PR team to get the comms out, update my board at what has happened. How did we respond to it? What we saw, how did it impact us, and what did we do about it, right? And also, if we have got a duty to notify to regulators, I'd go to do that as well, right? In terms of the recovery side of things, I would look at, okay, this was a near miss for us. What is it that I need to look at from our overall cybersecurity posture? Just relying on that firewall and that intrusion prevention system that comes as a part of that firewall is not enough. That antivirus is not enough. Our incident response plan was chaos. Like I said, in one company where I was brought in to look in incident response, we did a breach simulation, and I kid you not, right? It was a simulation. If it was a real attack, that business would have lost. We did a simulation of a golden, we were going after a golden ticket, meaning we were going to, get the access to their domain and lock the company out of their domain controller, right? But it was an active breach simulation that we did. If it was a real attack, that company lost. It took them 3 days to bring together all the individuals that needs to be involved and take right actions. And I was watching just from a sideline as to how you respond to this. It took them 3 days to then come together as a team to formulate a plan, right? Next steps. Now, in this case, it is slightly not all organizations will be that particularly bad, but equally, all organizations, I've seen incident response plan, which is like almost 100 pages long. I mean, when there's a golden hour, who's going to read those 100 pages, right? So having playbooks is important. Okay, if it's a phishing attack, the first thing we do is service desk to go and block the outgoing emails to that email address. The infrastructure team on the mail system is going to create update our, update those outgoing emails to that incoming and outgoing emails to that address. Our firewall team is going to update our DNS sinkhole, add this. So you have a very defined playbook with a clear actions. But at the same time, I'd also look at, okay, as a part of our overall cyber resilience, What is missing? What could have prevented this? The signature-based detection is not working. I need to look at how do I bring some automation in terms of intelligence side, from a cyber threat management perspective. Bringing a over expensive SIEM in this case would not have helped you. So SIEM is kind of infamous for that. It was brought in to solve the problem, the headache of security engineers. Instead, it added a headache to security engineers, right? So just having a SIEM is not going to help this. How are you going to intelligently automate your incident response? That is important. What kind of technical and process level control is needed to now optimize your incident response? Do you need to look at some kind of automation to take actions, like, for example, update your firewall for outgoing traffic? You update your mail system so that you don't have to rely on human intervention. That's what I'd focus in the recovery mode, right? Just to give you a little bit of insight how I've dealt with this incident. I hope this gives you a useful information to go and think about your own cyber incident response plan. Like I said, if you're interested in having a chat with us, in confidence, we are more than happy. No obligations, nothing from a sales perspective. We can have that NDA in place, and we can help you, at least guide you towards the right direction, and your team towards the right direction when it comes to incident management. Thank you very much. I think we're at the hour mark, and I really appreciate your support in this event, participating in this event. And yeah, so Pragya will be in touch with you with our the slide deck that I showed you earlier. Thank you.
Thank you.
Take care all. Bye-bye.
Yes. Thank you everyone for joining. Thank you very much.